Hey, good morning for those of you who have logged on already. I'm going to give it a few minutes just to let others log on. We're a little bit early, and then I'll dive in. Okay, so I will go ahead and get started. I know everybody has probably a busy day in the clinic, so I don't want to take more time than I need to. Thank you for joining me today. I'm really excited to be able to talk about our end-to-end solutions for Elekta's online adaptive therapy. So that's with IMSure 3D, which the release that's coming out soon is now integrated with Elekta Unity. And then also I'll talk about how our LinacView log file-based solution fits into that workflow as well. So before I get into the details of my talk, I just want to do a few housekeeping notes. Today's webinar will be recorded. You will receive a link to the recording, but you can also find access on our website, standardimaging.com, as well as access to previous recordings as well. So if you have any questions, anytime during the talk, you can put your question in the chat box and I will address those at the end of the presentation. For those of you who aren't familiar with Standard Imaging, we are based in Middleton, Wisconsin. We were founded in 1989 and we design and manufacture a full suite of QA products for radiation therapy. I realized I forgot to actually introduce myself a little more. My name is Vicki Howard. I am a physicist and a product manager here at Standard Imaging. I spent over 20 years in the clinic and am now really enjoying product management on the corporate side to help bring solutions to every clinic. So today I'm really focusing on Elekta Unity and its unique QA challenges. So as I'm sure you're all aware, some of the advanced capability of Elekta Unity is that it has an integrated 1.5 Tesla MRI imaging system that's used for both alignment and motion tracking, as well as looking at whether anything has changed anatomically with the patient. Uh, that imaging empowers daily adaptive planning for more personalized treatment, and that enables more precise IMRT or VMAT delivery with reduced margins, so you can get ultimately better outcomes for your patients. But of course, this real-time workflow, as well as the MRI environment, does create some very unique QA challenges that I know is tricky for physicists and clinics who are used to traditional workflows with standard Linacs. We do know that magnetic fields do impact the detector array accuracy, so you need to be mindful of that and know which detectors you're able to use. There are also just very few MR-safe QA tools available, so you need to get specialized tools for that. In terms of just limitations, there are limitations with the type bore for phantom use, so that needs to be considered. And as well, and I'll go into this in more detail, but the online adaptive workflow can prevent pre-treatment QA measurement-based tools and techniques that we're used to doing prior to beam on for all of our complex IMRT plans. So that's something that needs to be looked at more closely. So in terms of the Elekta Unity workflow, of course, it starts in the clinic in a standard way, as most patients do. In general, these patients very likely have an diagnostic MR scan that is merged with their treatment planning CT for contouring and then treatment planning, dosimetry planning. And so once that plan is approved and ready to go, it starts the traditional pre-treatment QA process. So that involves a secondary plan check of some kind. And then device-based pre-treatment QA is usually the standard approach moving forward from this perspective. Now, a lot of centers do use Phantom-like devices like the Delta 4 Phantom, which is MR compatible. Once the pre-treatment QA has been completed and passed and approved, the patient then comes for their first treatment fraction. Now, this is where things differ from the traditional workflow. In this case, once the patient is set up on the table, they acquire an MR image to evaluate patient setup and anatomy structure, and to decide whether this patient needs an adaptive plan prior to beam on that day. So in that case, there is a good chance that things go back to the dosimetry planning stage. And one thing that's really important to note in this process is this all happens while the patient continues to be on the table. So this is a very time-intensive process. It requires very dedicated staff, very skilled staff, and time is of the essence. So the idea is a new plan will be generated after a new anatomy contours are done with the new MRI scan. And then it will start again through the pre-treatment QA process. But at this point, it looks a little different from the initial pre-treatment QA of the preliminary plan, because now you're not able to do the phantom-based treatment delivery QA because the patient is actually on the table, so you can't do that. So you're truly relying on your secondary plan check at this point as sort of your gatekeeper for quality moving forward to treatment. And so this brings to light, like, really how robust is your secondary plan check? And that's where IMSure 3D can kick into gear from that perspective and offer more accuracy and more details for the analysis. So of course, for the next plan phase, it goes back to treatment. They very likely will do another MRI image, and then hopefully everything looks good at that point, patient's still set up properly, and you have your treatment delivery. Now, what about treatment delivery QA? So you've actually delivered this, but do you need to QA it? Traditionally, we as physicists QA every complex plan, but as I mentioned, we can't do that prior to this particular fraction. So some centers have tried to carry that burden on post-treatment. So they will set up after the treatment day is complete and then do a double check of the run of all of those plans again. And it's not, that's definitely very time intensive and not truly practical for clinics with the type of workflow for the Elekta Unity, because you would essentially be QAing every fraction for every patient. So that can be a challenge. So now if you implement more software-based solutions, you are able to incorporate that more seamlessly into the online adaptive workflow. And also you are not having to deal with the issue of dealing with an actual device in a magnetic field, because you're letting software kind of take on that burden of the QA. So again, patient starts with their treatment planning, preliminary plan as usual, first fraction pre-treatment QA with IMSure 3D that uses SIMOCA, which is our Monte Carlo based algorithm that's behind it. And that's truly a gold standard in secondary plan check. And this will give you a three-dimensional gamma information overlaid on your planning CT. I'll show you more details later on in my presentation of that, but it gives you a whole another comprehensive layer to evaluate this. Now, in terms of first fraction, you are still able to do your device-based pre-treatment QA, but what you can do with LinacView is in parallel, you can take the log file data from that particular treatment delivery, and you can do a fluence comparison back to the treatment plan. So it gives you a good baseline log file analysis, as well as you could potentially correlate that with your device. I'll show you in a couple papers a little later that there has been some research along those lines showing how LinacView correlates with the actual measurement, in some cases better than with the treatment planning system. So once that is all good to go, you have a check there, patient's ready for treatment again. Now, at this point, this could be their very first fraction. They do an MRI. Maybe the patient goes back through the online adaptive workflow. In this case, everything would be the same. After the plan check would be IMSure 3D. You would not get, though, you could still not do this pre-treatment check because, again, patient is on the table. However, LinacView does still incorporate into the actual treatment delivery. So you're able to get that same fluence map comparison immediately after treatment delivery. And one thing I wanted to point out is all of these, both IMSure 3D and LinacView are fully automated into the workflow. So there's, as soon as the treatment plan comes from the planning system, IMSure 3D will pick that up and do the calculation automatically. Any analysis or alerts that happen will be in real time, and you can configure it so that you're automatically emailed, so physicists are immediately aware of those issues. So it really helps with the workflow and the timing for the clinic. Similarly with LinacView, as soon as the treatment is complete, LinacView will grab the treatment delivery data, it'll evaluate the log file analysis, and give you any clinical alerts that you may need to be aware of. Both of these also have reports and documentation that you could upload into your Record Verify system. One really nice feature of LinacView is you are able to create and export a log file based RT plan. And you could essentially, let's say if you had some kind of, maybe had an MLC issue, so that was creating an alert for you in the system, you could generate your RT plan with that and import it either back into IMSure 3D or into your planning system and calculate that. And then you could see the actual clinical effect of that deviation. Now, if you were to do it back in your treatment planning system, it's truly an apples to apples comparison because it's using the very same algorithm. So any differences you see are purely a result of delivery differences. So I just want to highlight a couple very interesting publications that have come out recently. This first one is looking at SIMOCA dose calculation engine, the Monte Carlo engine, and how it can be used to identify single isocenter multi-target radiosurgery targets that are most likely to fail pre-treatment measurement. So this is starting to correlate what we're getting with log file based and showing that it actually correlates with measurements. And the ultimate goal is to be able to get to a point where maybe you feel more confident in skipping that device-based QA, which is actually a necessity for the Unity online adaptive workflow. But even within your busy clinic, there may be cases where you realize, okay, I'm confident I don't need to actually do measurements, and you can have a more focused approach to your device-based QA on your Linac. So in this particular study, they analyzed 31 single isocenter but multi-target SRS plans, and they compared the treatment planning system to the SIMOCA doses at the individual target level. So if there's 5 targets, they would have 5 different comparisons per plan. And they also compared this to map check measurements done on the same plan. So the results that they found here is that there were 28 out of the total of 217 targets that showed a greater than 5% dose difference. These were due to tissue heterogeneity, distance from the isocenter. They did find that basically for every 2 centimeters away from isocenter, they saw a 0.83% decrease in the dose. Also target volume size and plan modulation complexity. So the more complex the plan, the more differences they saw. Now, some important Takeaways from this is that the targets with the large discrepancy between SIMOCA and the treatment planning system had very poor gamma passing rates on map check. And then also, what is even more interesting is that the SRS map check results correlated better with the SIMOCA results compared to the treatment planning system in this case. So SIMOCA and IMSure 3D really is a good predictive measure of which targets in this case would have poor results with map check measurements as well. So what they concluded here is that SIMOCA, or IMSure 3D, SIMOCA is the Monte Carlo engine within IMSure 3D, identifies problematic targets early, enabling plan adjustments before pre-treatment measurement. So again, even in your standard clinical workflow, this is helpful. I'm sure we've all been in this situation where you're QAing a plan that came out late, you're QAing it at night, and it starts first thing in the morning. And you don't realize this until you do the measurement on the machine. So having these upstream indicators of where there might be an issue are super helpful. And not only for traditional workflows, but of course, especially for the online adaptive workflow, where you don't have even that overnight window, that QA needs to be valid and happen right away because patients literally waiting on the table for you. So that's, I think, a really useful paper, so I'd suggest reading it more closely. Some good information there. And then the second paper looks at evaluating the Elekta log files, or 4 Hertz log files, and how a secondary Monte Carlo dose calculation ties into that for VMAT prostate plans. So what they did here is they looked at 30 Monaco prostate VMAT plans, and they evaluated pre-treatment and on-treatment QA. And this little flow chart here in the bottom left kind of shows how they did that. So they took the plan from the treatment planning system and calculated the dose, and they compared that to the IMSure 3D dose. So you have, and that's considered the pre-treatment gamma analysis. For the on-treatment analysis, what they did is they did the delivery, and then they generated a RT plan from LinacView. LinacWatch is our sister software, same thing. And then they compared that back to the treatment planning system because they took the log file RT plan, they recalculated it in IMSure 3D or SIMOCA, and then did that on treatment gamma analysis comparison. And what they found is that the pre-treatment results compared well with SIMOCA, 96 to 100%, and the on-treatment LinacView results, which were calculated back in SIMOCA, compared from 93 to 99%. So both showed very good gamma agreement. What was also interesting is they did put MLC errors intentionally into some of these plans, and they found that the log file RT plan that was generated could detect MLC errors greater than 0.5 millimeter. So that's actually quite good. So in conclusion here, they really believe that SIMOCA and LinacView support accurate, efficient QA, especially for online adaptive workflows, and really can help minimize the need for phantom-based checks. So again, really helpful in terms of clinics that are busy now. Many clinics have very long treatment days. It's really hard for a physicist to get on the Linac to do these measurements after hours. So now I'm going to jump in to some level of detail to each of these solutions. I have done previous webinars on both IMSure 3D and LinacView, where I provide a lot more in-depth details. So if you want that, you can look back at my previous webinars, or I'm happy to do set up a personalized demo with you. So that would be good. So I'll start with IMSure 3D. Again, that's our SIMOCA algorithm, and that really had its roots in the Monaco Monte Carlo algorithm from years ago, but it was optimized for speed and accuracy. So it could be used as a very effective secondary dose calculation check. The calculations are quite quick, which again, for an online adaptive workflow, that is very important. You can't necessarily sit there for 10 or 15 minutes waiting for it to calculate. You can see here in general, prostates are very, very quick, less than a minute. Something with higher resolution and a little more larger field could take up to 2 minutes. But again, that's happening in general behind the scenes, because as soon as the treatment plan is exported to your record and verify system, it'll start calculating. So that's when the clock starts. So the only time as a physicist you would necessarily be aware of this calculation time is if you, for some reason, forced a recalculation within the system as you're using it. So again, that kind of ties into the absolute automation I talked about, that these happen immediately. Within IMSure 3D, you can configure templates to match the evaluation criteria from in your planning system. So here you can see side by side metrics for both your planning system and SIMOCA, and you can see the differences. So very quickly you could see where you have issues from a point DVH dose perspective. Now, what I feel is more valuable is the fact that we are able to view gamma information in 3 dimensions overlaid on your planning CT. Because the downside of just having one gamma value is, what does that mean? Is it failing in an area that I'm concerned about, or is it in the center of my tumor volume, and I really don't care if it's like hotter in that particular area. So here you're able to scroll through slice by slice, and you can see where the gamma agreement is or disagreement. You can also look at DVH information, comparing the overlaying treatment planning system with the SIMOCA calculation. So it really gives you a lot of power in this evaluation. All right, so now for LinacView. Again, this is fully automated. As soon as the treatment delivery is complete, it will start populating in this dashboard. So you can see each beam will come in here and it will do the evaluation, and you will immediately get an alert, whether it's passing, an alert, or even a failure. And that's all customizable, what your tolerances are for those. Again, similar to IMSure 3D, this can be configured to send emails if that's what you want, and you can also decide who gets which emails for which machine, so you don't have to worry about every physicist getting alerted for these things. You can fine tune that workflow. The results are stored in a patient-centered database, so you can easily get and look at historical trends for a particular patient, which is helpful in terms of machine performance. Once you click on a specific session, it takes you into a more comprehensive analysis page here. So this is starting at the summary interface. So you can see here, it kind of gives you a high level of all the different things that are being evaluated, what your tolerances are, whether things are within tolerance or out of tolerance. Again, color-coded, where red is a failure, yellow would be a warning, and green is pass. You have different tabs here available. Now, the ones in black don't have any tolerance data associated with it. However, that's very informational data. So one nice thing about LinacView is it's not simply just generating a log file and giving you a fluence comparison. If there is an issue, you are able to dive down deep, seeing where the issues lie, down to which particular MLC might be out, or if you have a lag in your gantry or a lag with your MUs, anything, you're able to look at some of the interrelationships there. And again, looking back at previous webinars I've done on LinacView, I go through that in more detail. I mentioned the color tabs. Now here's where you would create your RT plan if you wanted to export a plan. Especially, this might be useful if you have something that's out of tolerance, so you can then see what is the clinical implications of that. So exporting the RT plan allows you to recalculate in your own treatment planning system. And then PDF reports, so documentation of this delivery QA is very easy to do. All right, well, that's all I have for now. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Vicky. Yeah, like Vicky said, if you have any questions, please submit them either in the chat or the Q&A tab in your Teams window, and we'll touch base on those. I saw there's a couple that have come through during the webinar. One person was asking if we offer certificates of participation for webinars. Yes, we do. You just have to let us know that you'd like one, and we can work with you to create that. Let me see here. There's a couple more that came through. Says, at my oncology center, we use an Elekta. Recently, our traveling physicist asked if IMSure 3D was available. Is there some similar compatibility?
Yes, yeah, IMSure 3D is available for now all Elektas. So the Elekta Unity is the most recently integrated, so that is actually coming out in the upcoming release. It also is compatible with Siemens, a variant including Halcyon and Ethos, TomoTherapy, Radixact, CyberKnife, Zapx. So kind of covers the whole gamut there, which is very nice because it's able to really accurately model all of those systems. In some cases, even better than your treatment planning system is able to model it. So on top of that, it's a very good integrity check of your commissioning baseline data, because anything that falls outside of the norm, we would see pretty quickly when we go through the Monte Carlo-based commissioning process.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vicki. We had another one come through here. They say, thank you, Vicki. This is very new to my institution. And then they were wondering if there are any Elekta Unity sites on the call that were willing to share their experience. They say they would appreciate your input. So yeah, if you're an Elekta Unity user and you're willing to share your experience with this participant, just enter that feedback into the chat.
Yeah, and I do have some users who actually just recently presented at the Unity user meeting. So I'm happy to share that contact information as well. I think it's Michael Chaco at Stillwater Cancer Center. I'm not sure if he's on this call or not, but he's been doing some great work and some behind the scenes research on that as well.
Awesome, thank you, Vicki. I see we have some people typing, so we can kind of wait for their questions to come through, but that's all we have right now.
All right, well, I can follow up with that question. I'm not sure if it's a long question or if it's just kind of the text box. So, oh, here we go.
Yeah, if at all we are doing machine file QA after post-treatment, why can't we do it from before starting of treatment itself?
Well, you can. In the workflow that I showed you, you are able to run through your initial Elekta Unity plan. Because the patient is not on the table when you're doing that pre-treatment QA process, you do have to actually have to run the accelerator to generate that log file and grab it and do that analysis. So the challenge comes when the patient is on the table, when you're re-optimizing for your adaptive plan, you're not able to run through that until you're actually delivering. So in that case, then the analysis has to happen with that actual treatment delivery. So it happens seconds after rather than, prior to beam on with the patient on the table. But if you had a non-adaptive workflow, you can consider incorporating LinacView as a part of your pre-treatment QA analysis. So that's nothing stopping you from doing it in a traditional workflow where you're not doing online adaptation.
Awesome, thank you, Vicki. That's all I'm seeing come through. They said, okay, thank you. So that's all the questions that we have right now.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Feel free to reach out at vhoward@standardimaging.com if you have any other information or questions, or if you want some more information or a demo, I'm happy to provide one in more detail. All right. Thank you so much.